today we're studying Neptune square Mercury, and Julia Sophia is being interviewed by Loic Sadashiva. Our inspired imagination and creative narrative forces greater awareness by being at cross purposes with our ability to think and communicate clearly. Neptune's influence temporarily clouds our faculty of mind. Our thoughts assume a fundamentally unclear quality, and as a result, how we express ourselves becomes increasingly confusing and difficult for others to understand. Miscommunications, misunderstandings, or receiving confusing news force us to regain and practice clarity of mind. So, Loic.
Welcome, Julia. So today we are going to discuss the transit that James read, which is your Neptune squaring your Mercury when you were 10 years old. Your transiting Neptune was squaring your natal Mercury in the 12th house in Taurus. Let us take a trip down to memory lane and share with us what you remember happening at this time, at this point in time, that probably caused a greater awareness of a friction that you could no longer avoid or escape.
Yeah, thank you, Loic and James. So I remember this time very well. It's engraved in my memory, actually. When I was 9, my parents decided that we would all move to England. And I'd previously lived in Germany, so I'm German, and I'd grown up with the German language. So they wanted me to move to England, Devon, in the countryside, and learn English basically from the start, because I had learned a bit of English in primary school, but it's very basic. So they wanted to not only get me to learn the language, but experience a completely new field of people, a different culture, and kind of throw me a bit into cold water as well and see how I deal with that situation. And that was quite challenging as a 9-year-old. And I enrolled in a local primary school. So it was very rural. Everything was, of course, in English, and nobody spoke any German or any other language. So I was forced to learn the language very quickly. And I was pretty much integrated into the local customs very quickly as well. There was no opportunity not to escape, actually, because it was a very tight-knit village community. And it was a pretty challenging time. I had to come to terms with new frames of reference for everything, of course, a new language, new meanings to adapt to the making of meaning, which was different than I was used to and that I'd learned as a child. And also adapt to new teaching styles, because actually this primary school was a bit behind the level that I had already achieved in my German school learning. So that was good. That was beneficial, because I was able to, focus more on learning the language than the content, because I'd already covered some of that. So that was what was happening on surface level. But on a deeper level, it was quite challenging and confusing for me at the time, because I couldn't quite, let my essence or my thoughts permeate. So I didn't know how to express myself to people and how to get to know them and show myself, because I didn't have the means, the language, the tools. So that was a bit disconcerting. And I was quite shy and timid as well. And I had to work a lot on that during this time. People were welcoming though, and friendly. So that did help the process, I think. And I had a really good friend who was very talkative, and she taught me a lot of English, but just repeating things a lot. So she helped me in that process. But it was really a test. It was a test of accessing different forms of communication to talk to people. So body language and self, even the way you dress. I had to navigate that because there was a different way of expressing yourself in this school than I was used to, and channeling information in a different way and absorbing it in a different way because it was coming from a totally different way of knowing that these people were used to. So yeah, it was quite a learning curve that year in a lot of ways.
Yeah. You mentioned this aspect of forcing to adapt, right, to your environment. And we know that Mercury has to do with mostly the communication, your network. I wonder if you felt a level of isolation, and if you ever felt a level of isolation during that time, how did you face it?
So in the beginning, there was definitely a degree of isolation. One of my teachers didn't quite like me, I had the feeling. So I continuously I felt this need to prove myself to her. And then I actually learned more English quickly because I wanted to communicate better. But I think I just sort of endured it for a while, that this isolation in the beginning. So it was more of an endurance test. And then I realized that it's actually up to my initiative and my will to communicate in with whatever means. It doesn't even have to be words that would change the situation. And that's when I made this friend. So it was kind of this awakening moment of, taking initiative. And I was only 9, right? So you can play. Playfulness was such a powerful way to connect with people. So we would play in these trees and these shrubs around the school. It was very rural, and you don't really need that many words to do that. So it was, I think, making meaning together with people as a form of connection that transcends words that led to me leaving this state of isolation.
Can I ask, in the conversation was going on that you didn't understand, you had to imagine what it meant, had to make up a creative version of what was going on. How did that work for you?
Yeah, that's a good question because that leads me to think about the sensitization process that I was going through as well, because you have to pick up on other clues, right? You can't really rely on the translated version of anything. You have to read body language, just and the aura of a person, the way they move or the way they speak to you, look at you even, and how they, integrate you within the system. So I think this transit also sensitized me to other forms of understanding and, yeah, coming to terms with information in a different way. So, as I said before, not just using words, but connection at a higher level without words. So it was nonverbal, nonverbal connection and information that I learned a lot about during that time. And also tolerance, of course, because I was obviously the only one who was different. And I had to adapt to a certain degree, but still maintain integrity and my own identity at the same time. And that was challenging because I had to sort of find a role in this community, but still be myself. So that was a constant process of negotiation.
That would be my last question to you. If you could describe your experience of that friction in few words, or describe it in terms of a necessary step for you to move forward to where you are now.
Okay. So sensitivity would be a key word because having been forced to accommodate this new environment just opened up all my portals of perception and my senses, and my observation of people. So that was very important, and it's still useful in what I do now as a tarot reader and an astrologer, because you have to meet people wherever they are, no matter which background they're from. And that helps me to understand where they're coming from, because I might be speaking language that they don't understand. So it's my job to communicate nonetheless. So it's about transcending that. So sensitivity, transcendence of verbal communication to a higher form of communication, creativity in the means of sharing information, because not everyone responds to information in the same way. And I learned that having gone through that process myself. So it's about relaying information just in the sense that you have to tap into the person a bit and see where they're at, and then use that to show them something. So it's about a somatic awareness almost of how to project information.
Right. Thank you, Julia.
Yeah, thank you.